Choros is the first mobile app that's purpose built for male friendship. I noticed that there was a big gap in the fact that there's really been a flood of mobile apps and services to address loneliness, but I don't think any of them are actually meeting guys where they're at in terms of how they think about building bonds and fellowship and friendship. So Choros is really built to function to meet guys where they're at. So getting guys together in small groups based on activities that they share and based on personality archetypes and matches so they can kind of help carry good hangout experiences from one time to the next. I think especially men, from the ages of like 30 to 45, 50 are a very underserved demographic. There's a huge untapped need. I mean, the first 50 paid members that I had, I spoke to one on one on the phone to understand like how, they think and where they went to actually, find community. And I mean, they listed off five or six other apps that just did not exactly like scratch that itch. So I think that's kind of really why it's the right time. And then at the end of the day, there's also a lot of automation and technology there to help like scale the personal touch and the group curation that we're doing that I don't think existed 7, 8 years ago. I'd like to get to. I mean, I'm slow and steady. I'm still a solo founder. I'm operating with a couple of virtual assistants, but that's pretty much it. So right now, I'm going for 100 paid members by the end of the year, net paid members. So, um, was able to capture 70 from the beta test, and just kind of starting, pushing out the live mobile app. So, hopefully that'll lead to 100, and then next year with the proper funding, looking to 10x that member base. Pretty huge. I think the biggest thing was that so I came to Melt with a web app MV that users were using, but it wasn't what I actually consider Melt really helped break through for me was not necessarily and I don't consider what Melt did a prototype at all. I consider it a functional, like publicly available product. I really think what I had was a brittle prototype that would service a few dozen users that on heavy orchestration could do a proof of concept. Really did is it got me from prototype to something that I could actually market to the public. So yeah, I think they made really big strides there. Yeah, I mean, I'm non-technical. This is my first time into doing anything of this nature. The I think the technical aspect and the build was always a really big black box for me. I didn't know what was easy. I didn't know what was hard. I didn't know how long anything was supposed to take. So I think what Melt was able to really help me out with was just defining a good scope for the prototype to get me sort of above the line on like, hey, here are my gaps that I don't want users that are paying for this to experience, one, two, three, four, five issues that my beta testers are saying that they are experiencing. And I think, yeah, what they were really able to do was, yeah, just the communication and the explanation on like what was feasible, what could get done, and what I should scope was really helpful. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest impact that what Melt delivered on, and it was mostly essentially it was packaging. It was a mobile app wrapper that was approved by the App Store, and it was got me far above the line on user experience, which were the really huge things that were preventing me from monetizing. I couldn't put forward my prototype as like I had a serviceable prototype that was doing the right things for a dedicated beta test user base, but for a broader user base that has specific expectations on how a mobile app is supposed to look and feel. The biggest commercial impact they had, and it was huge, is allowing me to essentially charge for my service, which I really couldn't do before. I think I think without Melt's pro bono, I still likely would have been stuck in web app purgatory, to be honest. Really good. I enjoyed that the executive team was always, available, and always, kind of able to. And I think the most effective way that I engaged with the team on the build was, I would approach. Manuel was always really open to like clarify some of my non-technical ideas into something that, okay, hey, like I know how you're thinking about this. This has been done before in like these like two, three different ways. Like think about how these are done and then get back to me and I would say, okay, great. I think it should be done this way. And he would communicate that to the execution team. And then working with, the delivery team on that, the engineers and the project manager just on the execution, they were super communicative and helpful along the way when it came time to execute. I think I could give an example if that's helpful. You know, I was struggling with because I'm still sort of on an invite only basis. So I gate. It's a social app that has a real community focus, so I gate it pretty heavily. I also want to control like what someone's initial experience is, and that's still time dependent. So I didn't really know how to manage like first login and first experience. And so I came to Manuel with like, hey, I don't really know how to do this, and I want to get this done before it goes on the App Store because we can't just kind of have this login where somebody doesn't really know how to access it or and kind of blindly creating an account because social apps tend to have that cold start problem where if someone doesn't have a really curated experience right away, um, they churn. So he basically kind of walked me through this. Hey, well, actually, why don't we do this? You can create, then set up, then preload, and then approve their accounts up front. And this is how we can build it. And we can essentially have two entry points on the mobile app to like request an invite for approval and then easy login that it just has an off code. So I kind of walked through that with him. Then he was able to deliver like much more specifically like the execution plan and the stories for the team, and they were able to stand that up in about 2 weeks. That's a good question. I would say that the team's dedication in making sure they left me with a sustainable, stable web application. I think a lot of contract engineers like will sometimes kind of overscope and overestimate their capabilities, and then when they can't reach that star that they hook themselves onto, they'll kind of start to walk that back and be like, oh well, you'll just have to kind of deal with that, and I've got to work on other projects and everything. And as a non-technical founder, it's really scary to not to just not know what's going on with your app and just not know. It's like, well, if it crashes, I can't do anything, right? And I think we experienced, and this was just kind of a remnant of the old prototype. There were some database issues with it. And they went ahead and I mean they fixed it. They revamped the database, and that was not in their original scope, but they were more like, "Hey, we took this on. We don't want you walking away having that fear that, the the back end could blow up at any moment and you're going to be left with, sort of no recourse to deal with it." So I I was pleasantly surprised in their dedication to like sort of my peace of mind there. I think, I had been dealing with intermittent crashes when there was heavy use, and one of them just happened to occur at a time when a number of events were going on that people needed to use the group chat. And yeah, I mean, those guys were on it, you know, immediately and kind of working with me right through it. And I think that was like a good light bulb moment where they're like, "Hey, okay, we get it. We want this to like happen to you like in the future when we're like if we're not in an engagement, like we don't want you to have to go through this. So we're gonna make sure that we get you above the line here. Yeah, so it's giving me just breathing room. I think that's the biggest thing. Like there are things on the system admin side of the app that, by the way, that was not in their scope. So what I'm about to say here is like there are things that I still deal with on that end that are, I know that aren't scalable. It's allowing me to do is be like, okay, I can put this out into the market and I can start to feel like where the issues are and where the roadblocks are going to be from that keep this from being like a art that are the gap between this being like a serviceable product to this being like a delightful product. And I have the stability now to sit with that and to experience where that is. And then I think like I'll come back and to like a new engagement and say like, okay, cool, here's where it was. But I think beforehand I was just so worried about like, well, I'm not even going to be able to get like customers to even test this out because there's it's not even quite there to do that, and it's crashing all the time. So like just getting to that point where it's like, I was crawling, I'm walking now. And it's giving me like the peace of mind that I can sit and be a founder and sort of listen to my users. When they tell me things now, when they tell me like, yeah, I'm experiencing this, I wish I had XYZ, I'm not being like, oh my gosh, it's like that's a great idea, but I like that so far from where I possibly am to like, okay, great, that's a good note for my next sprint. So yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah, good questions. The biggest thing, I think the biggest thing, honestly, was my push was really like because with B2C mobile apps, the appetite for investment is like just it used to be I have an idea like this is going to be really cool, like then gather investment. Then it was like, hey, put something out there, get beta testers, and then like prove traction. Where the market is now is like, yeah, get a ton of traction and get revenue, and then maybe we'll talk. So that's the biggest hurdle that the build that they put up. It's a monetizable product. So I'm, just being able to go into rooms and say, and not walk around being like, oh, I'm pre-revenue, and actually say, oh yeah, I'm doing, I'm modest, but I'm doing, $1,000 monthly recurring revenue. That like is a light bulb for anyone that's in the ecosystem to be like, wow, okay, that's cool. So yeah. I'm approaching a raise, and then in tandem with that, over the next 2 months, it's really going to be kind of understanding where the pain points are to scalability, and then working to scale the app with better automation, likely deploying agents within the app that can actually take some of those like actions, like inviting users to specific events and things that are just like very manual and time consuming. I think we'll be able to focus on that side of the product, on sort of like not just how it looks and feels and how the user interacts with the mobile app, but how it functions on a system level to give users better um, end experiences. I think that there are at this point now like kind of small angel investors or like crowd fund or extended circle friends and family investors that there's now enough traction for. I think my current build will get me to what I'm looking to do right now is like, can I stretch this current operation to like 200? The next, I think, development sprint will be able to actually get me beyond that because I probably don't think the app is scalable enough to handle more than that. But it's a good milestone to get to. The Melt team is a collaborative team. I think that maybe some non-technical founders that have had past experiences with contracted developers or freelance developers is, there's that sort of mindset of like, yeah, I got this, like, get back to me in 2 weeks, right? And that's not them. So I would say, like, don't hesitate to like communicate incrementally to continue to provide feedback and get like, you know, get closer to like what you want out of the build.